Welcome to Proline TV here on this Tuesday, March 11th. Kevin Rogers with you as we take a look at the top NHL first period trends and best bets for this evening. And we'll get into all the games. So without further ado, let's break it all down. And if you're new to these videos, I have a Google sheet that I've kept track of all the first period stats in the NHL. You're going to see it during this video all throughout for every team, so you get a better idea of what these teams have done. And if you've been here before, then we welcome you back. So let us begin with our first game as we have our sheet here, and we have every team broken down as well as their records for the entire season. So we're going to start with Columbus and New Jersey as they are meeting up in Newark tonight. And Columbus has been one of the better first period teams this season at 28, 14, and 21. And the New Jersey Devils actually at home, they've been terrible. Look at that, 4, 9, and 15 in the first period so far this season. So it has not been good for the New Jersey Devils. Now let's begin with Columbus and what they have done recently. Now Columbus, for as good as they've been, they have not led after the first period in 5 straight games. Now granted, they had that huge bust out against the Rangers a few days ago and beat them at the Garden 7-3, but still 5 in a row that they have not led after the first period. They went through a long stretch where they had trailed just once after the first period. Now they've had problems leading after the first period. As far as the New Jersey Devils go, they're coming off that 3-1 win over the Flyers on Sunday, but look at that streak in the first period there in column G, that they have now had 7 straight unders in the first period, the Devils. And yes, they have done a pretty good job of limiting opponents. Also, they're having problems scoring as well in the first period. But the Devils, though, on a nice under streak in the first, so maybe something to consider in that game. Now, taking a look at the second matchup of the night, Vegas is at Pittsburgh. And these teams just met out at T-Mobile Arena back on Friday, March 7th, back last Friday, and Vegas shut out Pittsburgh 4-0. They led 1-0 after 1. The Golden Knights, off of a 6-5 home loss to the Kings, they trailed 2-0 and ended up losing that one. They've had a lot of high-scoring games with LA this year, but looking at what Vegas has done since the Four Nations break, they played well. They've won 5 of 7. Their totals have been up and down in the first period, so nothing really substantial there. But as far as what they've done on the road in the first period, you see the gold is the games at home. Anytime it's the color of the team, that's a home game, and the white is a road game. So at LA, they trailed 1-0. At Boston, they trailed 2-1. At New Jersey, scoreless. At the Islanders, they trailed 1-0. That they really have not been great on the road of late. And before that, they were playing better towards the end of January. But in the first period, they have not led in 4 straight road games. So maybe something there to consider. Now, Pittsburgh has been awful on the road in the first period. I know they're back at home tonight, but they have not been able to produce at all on the road. I think it's 12 of 13 that they have not scored a goal in the first period on the road. Now, granted, they came back and beat Minnesota. Now, flipping it to the home, even you see here, they had that 3-2 game against Toronto, that crazy 6-5 overtime loss back a few Sundays ago, but they've given up in the first period at home 2-2, 1-1, even before that 1. So that 6 straight home games they've allowed a first period goal. So something to maybe focus on tonight with Vegas, that maybe the Golden Knights will get a first period goal. Also, Pittsburgh, 3 straight games now they've gone under in the first period. The Panthers and the Bruins meet in Boston tonight, and it would have been the Brad Marchand reunion, but he's injured, but he just was traded from the Bruins to the Panthers back at the trade deadline. And we look at what the Panthers and Bruins have done this season. The first 2 meetings early on were both overplays in the first. The Panthers dominated the Bruins 4-1 in the opener in the first period, and then led 2-1 at TD Garden. Less than a week later, won that game 4-3. The Bruins got revenge in the next meeting and won 4-3 in overtime in January. But all 3 matchups between the Bruins and the Panthers have gone over in the first period. So on the Panthers here, they've done a fantastic job. Back-to-back shutouts the last 2 games. Expect Sergei Bobrovsky to start again tonight. But 7-1 to the under the last 8 games in the first period, and 4 straight they have not allowed a goal. So that's pretty impressive. Now, as far as the Bruins go, and they've had plenty of struggles this season off a really good win at Tampa Bay, 4-0 on Saturday. They scored 3 goals in the third of that one. But you see what they've done recently, that they've dropped 8 of 10. They've had their struggles, and even in the first period since the Four Nations break, they've only led twice after the first. And really, looking at some of the games they've led after the first period, 2-0, 2-0, 2-1, 2-1, that they need to score a pair of goals if they want to lead after the first. That getting even 1 goal or less, granted here against New Jersey, they led 1-0, but a goal or less, and they aren't going to win. Obviously, not going to win with 0 goals, but Boston, when they have a really good first period, they're fine, but 1-0 really isn't cutting it for them. But we'll see if that Bruins-Panthers trend of high-scoring first periods continues, or if the Panthers now have figured it out, where they've had a lot of low-scoring first periods since the Four Nations break. The Senators and the Flyers hook up in Philadelphia, and Ottawa is on the road with no rest after they beat Detroit last night 2-1. Going to guess Linus Ullmark, who's played in every game since the Four Nations break, and even dating back to February the 8th. We'll see if he ends up starting again here on a back-to-back. Ottawa has not had a back-to-back so far since the Four Nations break, and the Senators, only once they've led after the first period since the break. That was against San Jose, and they're coming off back-to-back games without scoring in the first period. Now, as far as the Philadelphia Flyers go, they have played, or they started off better after the Four Nations break. They had those 2 big wins at home against Edmonton and Pittsburgh. They've kind of spiraled backwards. 4 straight losses, all at home for them. And you see in the first period, except for the Seattle game on Saturday where they led 1-0, just getting into these holes, down 4-2, 2-0, 1-0. And now they face Ottawa again tonight. The offense is dried up after it really exploded those first 3 games by scoring 16 goals. And since then, really not a lot to speak for. But I believe I have a number on Edmonton here and on the side. Yes. The Senators are 7-1 to the under the last 8 games with no rest in the first period. So that's definitely something to monitor, that no rest in the first period. Ottawa's having these low-scoring games, so maybe you can find that. It's not going to be a best bet, but at least something to maybe just keep one of your eyes on. Tampa Bay is at Carolina, and the Hurricanes are favored here at home. Carolina, we're going to start with them. They have won 4 in a row, and you see there in the first period, they have not allowed a first-period goal in 3 of the past 4 games. So it's been a good job by Carolina, and beating Winnipeg on Sunday. They are 4-1 to the under the last 5 at home, or just overall, excuse me. But even at home, you see what they've done. Pretty good job not trailing, except for the Edmonton game. Now, as far as the Lightning, Tampa Bay, they are of late. They've been pretty good at home. They had that one struggle against Buffalo where they trailed 3-2, came back and won that game 6-5. But the Lightning, since February the 6th, they've trailed just once after the first period. And even on the road, they've been solid. They were scoreless against the Panthers. They led Washington 1-0, led Montreal 2-1, led Detroit 4-2. So since then, they have been pretty good in the first period. So maybe Tampa Bay is worth a shot. Earlier this season, Tampa Bay lost at Carolina 1-0 in the opener, came back and won that game 4-1. And there was one other game. Oh, they led 1-0 in the second matchup at home. So each of the first 2 meetings between Carolina and Tampa Bay have gone under the total in the first period, and we'll see if that trend continues. At 8 o'clock, the Avalanche and the Wild in St. Paul, and Colorado coming off of a 3-0 win over Chicago last night. That's now 6 consecutive victories for the Avalanche. They continue to roll, and in the first period, interesting that game stayed under. You know, a high juice in that total last night. It was like 150 or so, laying 150 in the first period, and that game stayed scoreless through one. But Colorado's still been pretty good in the first period as far as not allowing goals. And a number here on the side that I have for them: 5-0-2, last 7 with no rest. So Colorado's been good on the second end of a back-to-back in the first period. And the last time this happened came against St. Louis back on Sunday, February 23rd. Led 1-0 after one, lost that game 3-1. But at least in the first period, they've been pretty good as far as leading after one. Now, as far as Minnesota, they've had their struggles in the first period of late, not scoring a goal in the first period in the last two, losing at Vancouver and losing at home to Pittsburgh. And they're 3-1 to the under in the first period, the last 4 games. So a bit up and down as far as the side goes in the first period. But we've seen some low-scoring games from Minnesota. And they just played back at the end of February in Denver. The Wild led that game 2-1 after the first period, lost that game 5-2. And before that, Minnesota led Colorado 1-0 after the first period, won 3-1 back on January 20th, trailed 2-1 at home back on January 9th, lost 6-1. And I believe, yes, the purplish pink is playing an opponent with no rest. So Minnesota has played Colorado this year where Colorado came in with no rest, and the Avalanche still beat them. So second occurrence of that this year. And again, Colorado's been very good with no rest this year in the first period. And we'll see what they do tonight in Minnesota. The Rangers and the Jets hook up in Winnipeg. And the Jets a substantial favorite here. We'll start with Winnipeg. And they met earlier this year at the Garden. 1-1 after one. Jets ended up winning that game 6-3 on November 12th. And so far since the Four Nations, Winnipeg is 4-1 to the under in the first period in the last 5 games. And the last 2 games of their road trip, 1-0 games each way. In fact, on that road trip, 3 of those games finished under the total. Now, seeing what the Jets have done of late at home, granted only 2 games since the break, trailed San Jose 1-0, led Philadelphia 1-0. So a lot of unders for the Jets in the first period at home. Now, taking a look at the New York Rangers and what they have done. Since that 5-0 shellacking in the first period against Buffalo, I don't know what happened in that game on February 22nd. They lost 8-2. They've lost 3 in a row overall, but in the first period, they've been good. 4-0-4, so they haven't trailed at the end of the first period in 8 straight games. And we'll see how they respond after a tough weekend, losing in Ottawa in overtime, and they led that game by 2 goals. Columbus, you have 7 goals. They're at home. So you got to expect Shesterkin's back in net tonight for the Rangers. But a tough last few games, but at least the first period, maybe worth a look there with the Rangers because they're playing at least well to start. The Capitals and the Ducks in Anaheim and Washington now heading west after they had to come back in the last 2 games against Detroit and Seattle. They've won 4 straight overall, but they trailed after the first period in each of those games against definitely inferior opponents. And the Capitals, they have not been good in the first period. You see of late, they are 1-5-1 the last 7. So they've had some issues there. They're allowing goals in the first period. But the Capitals, though, from a total standpoint in the first period, going back to the beginning of February, that's now 11-2 to the over in the first period for the Capitals, that they're going to be high-scoring games. And the last time they played Anaheim, they led 2-0 after one, won that game 3-0. So the Capitals, obviously, with some confidence here against the Ducks. And looking at what Anaheim has done recently, they've actually been decent in the first period. Since the break, they've only trailed twice, and the totals in the first period have gone up and down, as you see. They've alternated pretty much every game. But the Ducks off of a home win against the Islanders on Sunday, and now the start of a back-to-back where they have Washington tonight and they go to Utah tomorrow. But Anaheim at least has held their own in the first period in the last few games. The Islanders and the Kings from LA, and the Islanders remaining in Southern California after their loss to the Ducks on Sunday. Let's begin with the Islanders and New York. Decent since the break, or at least the last. They had the 2 losses at home to Dallas and to the Rangers, but since then they're 4-2 overall. They're 4-2 in the first period. The totals have kind of been a little bit all over the place, but the Islanders, it's pretty simple with them of late. If they don't allow a goal in the first period, they're probably going to lead. That they're not going to lead 2-1. I mean, you see it against Winnipeg, they did, but in 5 of the last 6, they've led in the first period, or after the first period, they haven't given up a goal. So you're going to get Sorokin back in probably tonight after he sat out in the second out of the back-to-back in Anaheim. For the LA Kings, they've won a few in a row here. They drew the Blues 3 times in 4 games, which is kind of an odd scheduling thing. But they did beat Vegas. They beat Vegas twice. There were 2 big wins for them because that Pacific Division is pretty tight with the Oilers, the Golden Knights, and the Kings at the top. But LA, though, off that 6-5 win, LA, who was not known for a while as a big high-scoring team in the first period, 5-1 to the over in the first period in the last 6 games. And I believe, the Kings did win that game 1-0, or they led 1-0 in New York back on December 10th, won that game 3-1 rather. So the Kings have beaten the Islanders once. There was a low-scoring first period. We'll see if that remains again. But back-to-back games now, the Kings have not given up a goal in the first period. So with all of that now in the books, we are going to look at our 2 best bets for the night. And I'm back with you now. All right, our 2 first period best bets. And we're going to look at a side and a total in these 2 games. So we're going to start here with a team that you can't really trust on the road in the first period, but they played better of late, the Montreal Canadiens. And we will get to that right now on why. Let's go back to the big board. And Montreal, first, we have to disclose this. Not ashamed of it. So Montreal is 3-16-12 in the first period so far this year on the road. It's terrible. They have had 31 games. They've led 3 times. So you're saying, why are you taking Montreal in the first period? Now, Vancouver has not been good at home in the first period, 9-12-10. So they're not exactly royalty either in that. But I'm going to ride this trend of late. Montreal, since the break, and they are coming off back-to-back losses to Edmonton and Calgary, but they are 3-0-4. They've not trailed after the first period in 7 straight games since the break. So they've played better early on in these games. Now, looking at the Vancouver Canucks, Vancouver's been good in the first period, but we'll see here after that loss to Dallas. That was a tough 4-1 defeat. They have not scored a goal in the first period in 2 of the past 3 games. I know they had that streak there of not allowing a goal in the first period in 4 straight, but considering what Vancouver's laying in the first period, I'm going to take a shot with Montreal. Worst case scenario, it pushes, but I'm going to take a shot with the Canadiens here in this game. They played better in the first period. Vancouver's played well in the first period, but Montreal, though, I think after the last 2 losses, we'll see an early bounce back in the opening period. Now, we're going to look at our second best bet, and it's going to be a total. It's the Predators and Sharks, and they meet in San Jose. Now, this is a little more of a contrarian play, and I am not against the contrarian plays at all. I like the contrarian plays. So with Nashville, they played San Jose in a home-and-home back on January 21st and January 23rd. Nashville trailed in the first meeting 4-1, came back and won 7-5. The second meeting, 2 nights later in San Jose, the Predators led 3-2, won the game 6-5. I cannot see we're having another high-scoring first period, 5 goals each time in the first 2 meetings. Now, looking at Nashville, and they were in a 4-1 overrun in the first period before going scoreless against Chicago back on Saturday. But they've had some issues scoring in the first period on the road. They were shut out against the Islanders and Rangers, did score 2 against Boston. Again, nothing is foolproof with any of these trends, just reminding you. But I just think that in this third meeting, we're not going to have a crazy first period again with these teams. And going to San Jose, the Sharks, they are currently, for the past 5, they have not scored a goal in the first period. So San Jose, with all the trades they've made at the deadline, I know Georgiev has been terrible in the first period, but we'll see who ends up starting tonight. If it's Georgiev, obviously Vanacek is gone. He's with the Panthers now. But we'll see if the Sharks also, after allowing 3 and 2 the last 2 games in the first period, if they can bounce back. That was that long road trip they went on to start after the break. They trailed 2-0 to the Islanders, lost 4-2. If they can get things straight against Nashville tonight. But those are the 2 I'm going with. I'm going to take the Canadians, and I'm going to take the under in the Predators Sharks as our 2 plays in the first period. So with all of that, that's it. We are all wrapped up for this Tuesday. Hope you got a little bit of information from this video as far as first period sides, totals, trends, best bets, all of that for tonight in the NHL. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel here at Proline TV. And also, we appreciate you watching all the videos on here. We'll be back with you coming up on Thursday, as we'll have more trends for you looking at the NHL going into Thursday, March the 13th. But for Tuesday, March 11th, we appreciate you watching. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks again. And as always, best of luck with your bets.